Okay.
He's like,
All
great.
right. It's The Bad Guys in association with the Sit Down Zumach podcast and Inappropriate Earl, The Bad Guys. I'm Chad Zumach, Florida's greatest. And as always, the great Comedy Store regular and his new series, The Jellies, is on HBO Max. Earl Skakel. Earl, would you like to introduce today's guest?
This next guest is really one of the reasons I started podcasting, to meet people like him. He's done so much, I don't even know where to start. From Arliss to Cobb. I know that's not Cobb, but Ty Cobb. And wrote the Academy Awards one year. But when I was a little kid, a little 12-year-old man, I saw a movie called The Hollywood Knights, and I really think that was one of the reasons I wanted to do comedy, because I found it so funny. And of course, years later, the cast was amazing. You had Michelle Pfeiffer, Tony Danza, Gaylord Sartain. I mean, it's a who's who. But the man who made the movie, one Mr. New Bomb Turk, is with us today, Mr. Robert Wuhl.
That was very kind of you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's an intro. That is an intro. Mr. Wuhl, before we get going, is there anything you want to plug, put out in the world for people to pick up?
No, I would just say, mentioning HBO Max. Yeah, I guess because some of all the work that I did for HBO is finally on HBO Max. So I would say all 7 seasons of Arliss is now on HBO Max, along with the 2 comedy specials I did, Assume the Position with Mr. Wall, which were these history monologues, comedic monologues that I did at NYU with real students. And that was very proud of those. So that's what I'll plug.
There it is. Go check it out. If you haven't already seen it, go rewatch it. And Earl, you were talking about Arliss before we got started, and you had something interesting.
Well, I really thought that Arliss was the precursor, and I frankly think the best version of like Entourage and Ballers, of course, with The Rock now, and a little bit of First and 10. Did you model yourself after a particular agent, like say Lee Steinberg?
It was not modeled after. I met with all of them. Lee Steinberg, Arn Tellem, Mike Trope, all of them. Drew Rosenhaus. I met with every agent. Also, I modeled it after agency. My father, we had a family business that's still around, actually. So I was looking at it as a guy who ran a business. He had just had a very unique clientele, but it's about a guy running a business. So, and also agents in general, you got to remember, agents by nature are parasitic in the sense that they're taking a commission of, I don't mean it in the, that's, I mean it in that they work on commission. So they, whether it's a travel agent, a real estate agent, an acting agent, any kind of agent, they work on commissions. So all agents have that much in common, dealing with clients. The Arliss just had to have a unique client base because it was basically very young, and their career lifespan opportunities were very short as far as earning powers. It was, and you know, so, and I knew the world. That's the other thing. I knew business, I knew human nature, and I knew a little bit about sports. I knew enough about sports and human nature. So that's why that's why it was an easy, you know, when the HBO came to me with the idea, and I was, you know, it's great. It's nice. Thank you for the kind words about all those other shows. Now, Mark Wahlberg will tell you flat out that Arliss was absolutely inspiration for Entourage. You know, Mark and I worked, you know, we worked the same gym for a long time. He absolutely will make no bones saying Arliss was the inspiration for it. First and 10, I had nothing to do with. No, that was actually, First and 10 kept me off the air for about, truthfully, because at that time, the president of HBO, Michael Fuchs, who started HBO, pretty much original programming, First and 10 had been his show, and it was to him an embarrassment. Well, I don't know if it was an embarrassment, but he would not give the green light to Arliss because he thought he knew the sports world, and it wasn't until he got fired that the next president said, "I think this is funny," and he gave me the green light. Yeah, First and 10 actually kept me off the air for a couple of years. The other ones,
Sorry about that.
I've only seen Ballers once. I watched it once, and I said, okay, I see what they're going for. Now, again, I shouldn't. I got to say, all series evolve. They're all organic processes. So I don't know what it's changed to over the years because I only watched the first few episodes, first 2 or 3 episodes. But those kind words. Thank you.
Did you find agents coming up to you after that saying, "Dead on, dude, you're doing it exactly the way you're supposed to do it"?
Yeah, that's for sure. What was interesting about agents is I would bring up a hypothetical to them talking under, and I got to become friendly with them. And I would bring up a hypothetical. And then invariably, most of them, I won't say all, but most of them would say, well, listen, I can't talk about this, on the record. And then they would go ahead and rat out all their clients. It was hysterical. Now, what we would do in our list is we would change the sport. We were never on the nose. If we had a story that we knew about, that we had heard about, we would, or a character, we would change the sport. We were never on the nose about anything. But if you knew sports, you said, I know what this is about. This is, we had I remember we had I think the first year we had a biracial Asian tennis player, which was the wunderkind of all time. Now, obviously that was based on Tiger Woods. But he had his mother, who was his guiding force. So, but we would never be on. One or two people caught stuff that we did. Some smart sports writers would say, "Great way to tell the so-and-so story." I don't want to mention names, but we were never on the nose. Never did that. It was because it was fictional.
I guess your time's up. I don't. What was that bell all about?
No, I'm getting texts. The show is too popular.
Now, did you
He's
have
getting
some?
text from?
Go ahead, Earl.
Well, I think. How did you like doing the special episode of Arliss that involved pro wrestling and WCW Nitro? That was quite fun, I thought, from my perspective. Were you a pro wrestling fan at all?
Growing up as a kid, not really now. However, it was popular sport. They couldn't have been nicer, the people there. I learned a lot. What I took from that episode, by the way, and of course they asked me to be on their show, which being the loyal son of a bitch I am, I had to say yes, and I did. And I was never more uncomfortable on a show in my life, but I did it. I tried to do the best I could. The thing I took from the wrestling episode was meeting the wrestlers and talking to them about, and I usually talk to them about, work. I said, what kind of hospitalization do you guys have? And they say, we don't get hospitalization. I was shocked to hear that. And I would say stuff like, let me ask you, I've always wondered, when you hit a guy over the head with a chair, what is the procedure? How do you do it? And he goes, you hit him over the head with a chair. I mean, there was nothing there about that. Also, I got to be in the dressing room before for the WWF show. That was fascinating. Watching these guys so beat up and so, and of course we talked about steroids off the record there, and they were all saying pretty much, if it makes you bigger, take it. That part of the wrestling, they couldn't have been nicer. They really were nice.
Yeah, it's funny because we're comics, so we talk to wrestlers all the time, and it's such a nomadic. It's such a parallel career. We don't have health insurance. We're getting screwed over by bookers. We got to book our own travel. It's
it's not the same. Come on, you don't have anybody jumping up on top of you, cracking your head with a chair, jumping up from time. Come on, it's not that hardly. Yeah, okay, you don't have hospitalization. Okay, I'll give you that. But it's like getting screwed over. That's every performer. That's That's I guess every but. Not to them. You don't. No. Now, others, that's a tough physical. I mean, that's their life. What's their life expectancies? I think comics life. George Burns was 101. How many wrestlers you see 101?
All of them, if you combine their ages.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right, Earl. Yes, Earl is correct.
And by the way, you've never seen Earl perform. He's very physical.
Okay. Listen, there were some hecklers I would have loved to jump from the stage on. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. You didn't do stand-up comedy at all, did you? You just happened to be a comedic actor, or
No, I did stand up. I had a HBO special, a comic special. I was on one of the very first Young Comedian specials.
oh yes, I forgot. I escaped
Yeah,
me.
no, I did. I started out as a stand up comic from 77 all the way till, well, I did it even during Arliss, I would tour. It was mostly after Arliss, but then I started doing the monologue shows, the history shows.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with being a stand-up comic, and I was pretty good. Um, I mean, I was, you ask people when I was at the Improv. My class was in New York and Catch a Rising Star in like '77. My class was Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, um, uh, Keenan Waynes, Paul Reiser, Gilbert. I mean, we were all starting together. So, I was, yeah, I did stand up quite a long. My biggest problem was I never wanted to be a stand. I wanted to be in film. I used
Right.
it as a stepping stone, like Woody Allen and Mel Brooks and stuff like the Paul Mazursky. But I loved the actual art form. I hated hecklers. No, I
Yeah.
didn't hate. I hated drunks. That's what I really hate is drunks. And that's not the profession to be in until you become a star and you can do the theaters. To be in, especially drunk women, and I mean, going out. I did not like that part of it. So I was not, and also being on the road brought out all the bad habits in me, which there were quite a few.
Sure. No, I agree with you. I hate drunk women too.
Yeah, but drunks in general. I mean, drunks in general.
Yeah, I know what
I
you're
don't
saying.
like drunks. I don't drink. So I mean, it's not. That's one of the few vices I never had because my whole family was diabetic. That's why.
That's what. Well, Earl's he doesn't drink either, so that's interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I've never had a drug or drink in my life, so I
Good for
don't
you.
know how I've lasted this long.
Yeah. No, that's. Are you funny?
I mean,
No,
I
the reason
think
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
any
to.
comic who says he's funny probably isn't funny.
Well, that's probably true. But the reason I asked him, we actually did a show about that once. About Richard Pryor would talk about how he thought he was much funnier when he was high, and to be honest with you, he probably was. There are a lot of people who we did a story on our list that way. It was about an alcoholic golfer who gave up a woman golfer who was an alcoholic, and she was fairly successful and she had won some big tournaments, and then she got sober and did not win again, and then she's fighting the urge to she wants to compete, and so if that's what gives her more confidence, well, that's a choice you got to make.
Was it based off John Daly?
No, it wasn't based on a golfer.
Oh wow. Okay.
No, it was based on, but it was based on anything. I mean, comics. I know a lot of people like that who did better work. Did you ever see the movie Wonder Boys with Michael Douglas?
Yes.
Right. Well, he talks about writing under the influence, and he's sober now. And he said, a lot of great work was written under the influence. So, and I agreed with that.
Now working on Arliss, I mean, you come across all these amazing athletes. I mean, were there some that you were surprised were actually pretty good, like actors or performers?
Well, first of all, it's all about how comfortable they are. Here's the deal. The trick was never let them push plot. They're not there to push plot. They're there for texture, and they're there to serve. And remember, most of the time, with rare exceptions, the athletes were booked upon who was available and who was on the West Coast. That's really, so we would write TBD. So we didn't know who the athlete was going to be until maybe a week or two before. So then we would change it for them. But it was just written so that anybody could pretty much fit in. Now, there are exceptions. Roger Clemens, David Wells. Clemens and I were friends for a long time. And I knew Roger and David Wells would say anything, and they would do anything. So I had more leeway with them. Barry Bonds, believe it or not, was the same way with me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Barry was great to us. Barry was
I would think he would be kind of, because of a reputation, but that's cool.
Yeah, but again, social issues.
Yeah.
I met Barry and Rod. I met these guys before. Did Arliss start yet? 90. I don't think Arliss had started when I first met him. I think about 93 is when the Marlins first came in. So I don't know what that.
Was Clemens playing for the Red Sox or Blue Jays at the time?
Red Sox.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you knew Roger back then. Wow.
Oh yeah, I knew Roger and Barry. I got to know a lot of the baseball and athletes. Barry Larkin, a lot of the guys, and I've stayed friendly with all of them. So because of you have the, they trusted me, so I could push them in different directions. There were a couple of people who were very good. We found out that Lincoln Kennedy, the lineman, was a drama minor in college. So I could actually give him something. He pushed plot. He actually pushed plot. So, because I showed him a movie, I said, "This is what I want." I don't know if you're familiar with. Anyway. The storyline was his mother was being buried. Was in a no. We had to take his mother's casket, like a cross country tour for some up to wherever it was. We had to take the casket in the back of the car, whatever, and or they were burying her. So I forgot what it was. But I showed him. It's a mad, 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 mad world. Because if you remember that movie, Dick Shawn is going to see his mother and he's driving, "Mama, I'm coming to get you, Mom." And I said, "Watch this. This is what I want." So he could do that. That was one of the few times. The athletes were okay, but you don't want to ask them to do something they're not capable of doing. That's just not right. Now, here's what I will say. Most good athletes are coachable, which means they take direction. So the more reps or takes you give them, the better and more comfortable they would get with each take and each, or each rep. So that's what they were good. And most of them were pretty, were fine. Reggie Miller was terrific. I'm not going to count the broadcasters. I expect them to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, Reggie Miller stood out to me. Roy Jones Jr., brilliant. A couple of them really jumped out and were a lot of fun.
What about in Blue Chips? Do you have any scenes with Shaq and Penny?
No.
Okay. All right. Earl?
Am I wrong? And when I watched Arliss, I always thought that it was kind of a combo of The White Shadow and maybe North Dallas 40 in terms of yes, it was supposed to be funny, but you guys also tackled some serious subjects like alcoholism and stuff like that. Was there a conscious effort to like blend humor and drama into that show?
Yes. On my part, in the beginning, it was a comedy. In the beginning, I didn't go into serious things at all, social issues. Then as I wanted to be more like MASH, and White Shadow I've never seen, even though I had Ken Howard on the show a couple of times. Once as Mickey Mantle character, another time as a Bobby Knight character. He was a great man. I miss him. But I never really saw The White Shadow, but I get what you're saying. I could pretty much pick it out. North Dallas 40, which is far and away the best football movie.
Yes.
That was about the business of football, which I like. But I was more interested in darker issues, like you said, alcoholism, Alzheimer's, gay athletes, transgender athletes, domestic abuse. And it's funny because now that we came back on the air, we started streaming it. Suddenly, everybody keeps talking about, "Oh, Jesus, we didn't know how you had all these social issues on the show." It was ahead of its time. That's what I keep hearing, ahead of its time. I said, I wish I was of my time and had Seinfeld money. But yes, that was, it wasn't in the beginning, but I had control. So I was going that way. Steroids, like I said, you name it. We covered it pretty much.
What's funny is we're strangers to you, but we've known you pretty much our whole life just from your body of work. It's kind of interesting. Like you don't have any idea who we are, but we're like, we know you. We know everything. Batman, we know it all. Like Earl was talking before the podcast, Hollywood Nights is like one of his favorite movies.
It really is because, and I brought up The White Shadow. It reminded me of that from the standpoint of, if you look at that cast, 3 or 4 of those guys later ended up becoming pretty big directors, Kevin Hooks and Timothy Van Patten and Thomas Carter. And Hollywood Nights was kind of the same way. I mean, if you look back at that cast, you had you and Michelle Pfeiffer and Tony Danza, and it was also a movie.
Fran Drescher?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
Gaylord Star Tate, Fran Drescher. I mean, we had quite a bit. He was very good. Floyd Mutrux had an eye for talent. There's no question about that. Interesting about you say Hollywood Nights, because it was my first movie, but to this day, outside of, I would say, Batman and Arliss, and that's because it's a TV series, and Batman, I could stop more for Hollywood Nights than anything else to this day. What happened with Hollywood Nights was interesting because when it first came out in the movies, did okay, moderate. We didn't. Porky came out a year later and had much bigger numbers, and Hollywood Nights did okay. But then it came on in the early rotation of HBO. when HBO started going on, and it would be on 4 times a day or something like that. And fathers would watch it with their sons. And people caught on. And then what's happened is over the generations, those sons have now grown up and they watch it with their sons. So it's become this generational thing. And I love it. Thanks.
I mean,
Now-
you mentioned Porky's, and I always compare the two. Do you think, I guess Porky's did better commercially because it was a little more rompier sex-wise?
Perhaps. I don't know. Perhaps. I think, timing is everything. Timing is, I don't know. Timing, how do you stop? Timing is everything. You have to be in the right time. I mean, for George Martin said of the Beatles, they were of their time. And now, obviously, they've stood the test of time. But when you first come out, timing is, I did a movie called Mistress, and which is one of my favorite films I've ever done. And it was about an independent filmmaker, but it came out right on the heels of The Player. And we didn't do any business at all. Timing is a lot to do with stuff, and including politics. I mean, I don't want to go into politics, but a friend of mine pointed out the other day, he goes, do you really think if COVID had not happened, would the election have come out differently? And I said, yes.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I mean, timing's everything.
By the way, where are you held up at? Are you in LA or New York? Or,
I'm in LA. I'm in LA right now.
Okay, yeah. He's in LA too. So I was just curious. What have you been doing during the COVID? How you been handling that since you brought it up?
Not much. I'm enjoying it. I mean, I'm not doing COVID.
You like it?
I'm enjoying my time. It's like at this stage, I don't do much. It's like I read, I do some work. I'm planning a big birthday party. Hopefully, I'm baseball season's here, so I'm in hog heaven. I watch baseball night and day. The the weather out here has been really nice. I have a nice house. I have a nice office, and as far as work, I mean, if somebody gives me some work, great. Otherwise, I don't. It's like I'm very happy. I've learned to cook a little bit. I watch Jacques Pepin videos, and I've learned to cook fish very well. And I'm trying to keep myself in shape. I've actually lost 2 pounds since the whole thing started. So I'm not doing that much, and I'm really enjoying it.
Earl?
Just one last question about Hollywood Nights, because I never thought I'd have you on to talk to you about this. When you do like that was your first movie, and I think it might have been one of Michelle Pfeiffer's first movies. Do you realize at the time that some of those actors are going to be big actors? Like, did you feel like, oh, this girl's going to be big, and Tony Danza? Well,
Tony had Taxi on. Taxi was already on the air, so Tony was a TV star. Michelle Pfeiffer, no, never in a million years. It's like she was beautiful, but never in a million. And the part wasn't that much. It was the girlfriend with the boy who's going away. I mean, it's not showing any chops. But I would have never guessed that she would become the great actress that she is. No, I did not guess that. Sweet girl, always nice. I ran into her again about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. It was great to see her. We've always, I've had good friends. I have a dear friend to this day, P.R. Paul, who played one of the knights, is one of my 2 or 3 closest friends. We've stayed. But no, to the other questions, no. It's not that kind of movie. Wasn't that kind of movie that you thought, wow, this guy's a great actor.
What was that,
I think I still see Stuart Pankin on late night infomercials selling foot pain powder. So
Good.
it always makes
Good.
me.
He's making a living. Good.
What's your baseball team?
I am a baseball fan.
I know that. I was saving it.
I grew up in New Jersey, so I'm also I have a great motto that I live by, and it's life is always better when the home team wins. And I really do like to live by that, and by the way, I don't mean just sports. I mean in family, in business, in politics, whatever. Life is always better when the home team wins. People are in a better mood around you. So I live in New York and LA, so I root for the 4 teams, there. But I also used to, going to college, I sold beer in the Astrodome. So I was always partial to the Astros. And I like baseball cities like Baltimore and Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. And I love I just like baseball. I like Major League Baseball. Now, I think there's 1,000 things wrong with it that could be better, but that's my, passion. But I do love, I just, do I like I said, it's better like when the home teams are winning because it's just more interesting. With the Yankees, I have good friends on the front offices of a lot of these teams. So that's, I'm going back to New York in about 2 weeks. So I'll be able to go to see the teams, in person. And I'm fortunate that, between the Mets, Yankees, Angels, and Dodgers, you got 4 pretty decent, usually pretty decent teams. Right now, the Yankees are not very good. And I don't expect them to be very good this year. I really don't. I don't like the way the ball club's put together. I think they got it. Listen, it's a very long season. We're only about 12% of the season in, so it is a long narrative. That's the great thing about baseball. I love it. It's the narrative. It's not like it goes on forever. It's a 6-month sport.
The Astrodome structure is still there. It's just sitting there, vacated. Yeah. That's weird.
I'm not even sure they can legally tear it down. It might be a landmark or something. I don't know what they're going to do. The Rats are loving it. They got a gray palace to live in.
Actually, before go ahead, Earl.
I don't think the building was ever the same after they filmed Bad News Bears 2 there. They just couldn't.
Probably right. I was there during that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was at school doing that. By the way, the original Bad News Bears, I will argue, is the most underappreciated sports movie of all time. The original.
They could never make that movie today, though. That's the problem.
No, they tried, and it was god awful. It was so fucking PC that it was it was ridiculous. Here's something. Everything's changing. I was watching on YouTube. My first job was writing for Rodney Dangerfield, and
oh, cool.
I watched actually on YouTube the first Tonight Show that I wrote. That he used one of my jokes, and I realized after it was over, couldn't do that joke today.
Wow,
couldn't do it.
Did you ever do stand up on the Tonight Show?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Is it on YouTube?
I hope not.
Did Johnny call you to the couch?
I don't think it was with Johnny. Was I with Johnny? I don't remember. I should remember that. No, I remember David Brenner, Gary Shandling, all the guests. So I don't know if I was on with Johnny.
Huh.
And I know I did get called over the couch by the other guys. I don't think I did it with Johnny.
It's amazing when looking at your IMDb. Your career is like all pop. It's all our pop culture. It's you've had your hand in all of it. It's like you were there. You were there, like the Batman, everything. It's crazy. Bull Durham. It's nuts.
What entertainment isn't pop culture?
I'm just saying, like everything I know in my life, my adult life, in my 40s, you were a part of it.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad especially being as old as I am. Yeah.
Now you brought up Batman.
Let me ask you.
Go ahead, Earl.
Well, I've often wondered. I never thought I could ask you a question about Bad News Bears, but I agree with you. That first one is just, it's almost perfection in terms of the time. And, all those kids playing the baseball players, they didn't seem like actors to me. And I thought that's where the remake failed. It seems like they just hired Billy Bob Thornton to mimic Walter Matthau. And then all those kids seemed like they had been given acting lessons, and you'll never be as good as the OG Tanner Boyle.
The original Bad News Bears is about America. It's the director, Michael Ritchie. In the 70s, there were 3, maybe 4 directors who, remember, this is the Vietnam War era and the Watergate era. So there were 3 or 4 directors who were holding a mirror up to America and showing, America as they saw it. Hal Ashby was one, doing his film Shampoo and stuff like that. Robert Altman was another. And the other was Michael Ritchie, who did 3 movies in a row, or actually 4 movies in a row, which really were big time satires, black comedy. Had a big influence on me. There were Downhill Racer with Robert Redford, which was about an egotistical skier. The Candidate with Robert Redford, which was about American politics. The Bad News Bears, which is about small town America. Americana and Little League, and any kind of, his thing was all about icons, the Olympics, The Election, Little League. I mean, and he did another movie called Smile, which is about beauty pageants, which is one of the great underappreciated comedies of all time. But he was the original Bad News Bears is about America and about American values, in the context of a Little League, story about these misfits. But when you see the other characters in this, Vic Morrow and all, and these people are gung ho about all this America stuff. I always claim it's the most underappreciated sports movie. The thing about sports movies, Ron Shelton, the writer director of Bull Durham, and I used to discuss is, why do most sports movies suck? And they do. I mean, I watch all of them, but they do. And what it basically comes down to, with very rare exceptions, is they usually come down to the big game. And there are no big games if you're really going to talk. How many big games are there? And they all come down, and when there's a big game, they're always told, or 90% of them are told, from the point of view of the fan. And the fan only cares about one thing: did the team win or lose? That's it. They don't care how you got there, what you did to get there, what happened. They don't care. All they care about, did the team win or lose? Well, the great sports films, you mentioned North Dallas 40. It's not about whether the team wins or loses the big game. Really not. Requiem for a Heavyweight. Great movie. Doesn't depend on The Hustler. Doesn't depend on whether the team wins or loses. Bull Durham. There is, it doesn't, even 8 Men Out. It doesn't really depend on whether the team wins or loses. It's about them throwing it. They're really good ones. And usually, usually your best ones, the team probably loses. Bad News Bears, team loses. Rocky loses. The best game, Bang the Drum Slowly, another great movie. It's not about a big game. The best sports movies are about, are not about the big game, because that's bullshit most of the time.
Where do you rank Bull Durham in the greatest baseball movies of all time?
I'm not going to take that vote, because I'm going to recuse myself. But it's number one.
Okay.
But usually I recruit. Same thing with Cobb. I can't talk about those movies. I let other people say it's number one. And I like baseball movies. I like sports movies as a rule. But it's so, unless you're really into the big game, unless you're, oh yeah, I'm going to cheer on this. Okay, that's fine. That's fine when you're 9. The thing about baseball especially is that baseball, unlike any other sport, celebrates losing. Baseball is all about losing. Even if you fail 70% of the time, you're hitting 300. You're still failing 70% of the time. The 3 greatest pieces of literature ever written about baseball, all about losing, which is Casey at the bat. Casey strikes out. Take Me Out to the Ball Game, right? It's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. And the other one is probably The Natural, the book, not the movie, the book, the novella, because the point he was making, again, about America and about values, is that in the book, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Natural, you should, is that here's a guy who has all the talent in the fucking world, and in the book, he's thrown it away. He's drinking, he's partying, he throws games, and when it comes time for him to, suddenly he has an epiphany and he's going to repent, and he goes up to hit a home run, and they bring in another guy to pitch to him who's the new kid. He strikes out at the end of it, because the Bernard Malamit's point is talent without character is not enough. Well, the movie ain't doing that. It's a Robert Redford movie. And it was also TriStar's first movie. It was expensive, and they made the right commercial choice. But it was too much hocus pocus for me. And the other thing about The Natural that always bothered me, and I never understood this point to it. Here's a young guy, young, good-looking guy. He meets a woman, sleeps with a woman, single. She shoots him. She jumps out the window. What did he do that he's got to hide for 20 years? I never understood that about the movie. It made no sense to me. The same way, and I'm ranting here, forgive me.
No. Talk on the
Keep
podcast,
going.
please.
The other thing is Field of Dreams, which is a movie I like a lot. But at the end, this James Earl Jones speech that they're now using all the time on a commercial. And he says, Ray, baseball reminds of us all that was once good and could be again. I go, what the fuck are you talking about? I go, you see all these people coming out? James Earl, you couldn't play until 1947. You see all these people coming out from the Field of Dreams? They're all white. What are you fucking talking about? Baseball reminds of us all that was once good. Give me a fucking break. You know, and
That's hilarious.
Well, you know what's interesting is we did a panel on a buddy of mine was writing the musical version. They were doing a musical version for the theater of Field of Dreams, and he was writing the book, the libretto. And I said, "You used the speech?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." I go, "Let me point something out to you." And after he heard it, he went, "You know, I never thought of that." And then he said, "I got to change this." I go, "Good luck." Now they pulled the rights from out from under him anyway. And but that's always bothered me about that, and I can't believe they're playing this, especially in today's society. They're playing that thing.
That's a funny angle.
Holy shit!
See, I have to disagree with you in the big game winning because I grew up in Cleveland as a Cleveland Indians fan, and Major League is one of my favorite baseball movies of all time. And
I get it.
that was our World Series until we went to the World Series.
I get that. No, it's an entertaining movie. I like that, but it's not in the class of these other films that I mentioned as a movie.
But see, I like it when the team loses at the big game, because that's, to me, what made like North Dallas 40 so amazing. There's a very powerful scene after the big game where Charles Durning, who's a great actor, has a one-on-one with John Matuszak, who I will guess had no acting experience or very little. And it's such a powerful scene because Charles Durning is saying, "Hey, this game is a business." And John Matuszak is like, "You call it a business, we call it a game. When you call it a game, we call it a business." And it was like, that sounds like something that actually has been said in a locker room before.
Yes, absolutely.
And if they win the big game, that scene probably doesn't happen.
Right. No, and John Cusack, I think, did have acting experience because he was acting like he wasn't on juice for a long time, I think. And also Charlie Durning, who was a dear friend of mine, may rest in peace, very close friend, played in the card game with him every week. And he was a World War II, you know, he was at the battle, I think he was on D-Day or the Battle of the Bulge, one of them. I miss Charlie. Stop and think of the movies that you mentioned. I said Rocky, North Dallas 40, the Bad News Bears. I mean, The Hustler, you know, the
Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf, they lost.
Never saw it. Didn't see. That was a little bit, I was a little too old for Teen Wolf.
I think you were too busy making movies to watch Teen Wolf.
I'm never too busy to watch a movie.
It always bothers me in sports movies when the actor clearly doesn't know how to throw a baseball or shoot a jump shot.
That just, you know, a lot of them are like that. Depending on how good the movie is, you can get away with it. I mean, Pride of the Yankees, another pitcher doesn't come down to the big game. Kerry Cooper couldn't play for. They had to play him at, you know, they had him. He was right-handed, so they had him run to third base, and then he reversed the negative. You know, so
what was the Robert De Niro one where he was playing?
He's terrible.
Yeah, he can't even throw a ball, I hear.
But that movie is great. Bang the Drums Clothing. Yeah. That's a great movie. That was the first time I'd seen De Niro because I had not seen Mean Streets yet. This is like I'm in college, and I said, I don't know the guy who's playing the catcher, but I'm convinced he's an idiot. So that's a great movie, though. That's a true. But again, I'll tell you how much you got to know. You just brought up something. In that same movie, Danny Aiello, who was a friend of mine, another one who just passed. God, I'm getting old. That was one of his, I think maybe his first or second movie. And he could play. Danny could play. And he walks out, and they get ready for one of the early shots. And Victor Gardenia, who played the manager of the team, comes over to Danny and says, "Danny, which one is third base?" Okay, which one is?
Oh no!
By the way, he was nominated for an Academy Award.
Oh Jesus!
Okay, so there you go.
Well, it's funny. I remember one time being on the beach and like I did like 1st and 10 just because it was like, I don't know, silly and
It's
didn't have to
sports and
take it
tit.
too seriously. And I saw Jason Behe. I think he was with his family, and I'm like, "Hey, you're Tom Unessa, and I had a football. Throw me the rock." And he might have thrown the worst pass in the history of throwing a pass. I'm like, "Oh, you're not really a quarterback." I didn't say that to him, but I was like, "Oh, who's throwing those spirals then?"
Yeah, we were pretty good about that in Arliss. That if we had scenes in the arena, these guys had to be able to at least fake it pretty good. They had to do that. I mean, Ron Shelton with Bull Durham actually fired. He had a week of camp before Bull Durham started. Again, going back to the point of view of the fan, Ron would say, he goes, "I don't know what the fan is thinking. I know what the second baseman is thinking because I was a second baseman. He's thinking, I'm trying to keep my job." And that's basic. See, that's the difference. You're trying to keep your job. That's universal. You don't have to know sports for that. But he actually fired. Excuse me. He actually fired the guy who was the actor who was playing first base because he didn't think he could play well enough. Interestingly, our technical advisor, and this is back in '87. Our technical advisor for that movie was the manager of the Durham Bulls at the time, by the name of Grady Little. He was a good guy.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
You don't make a good sports film, and I don't have any connections besides Earl to Hollywood.
You don't have any connections.
Is the '86 Mets would be a fantastic film. I'm
Why?
fascinated with that team. Just all the personalities and like everything that went through with Doc, Dwight, Lenny Dykstra. I mean, there's so many crazy. I always hear folklore about that.
By the way, there's a documentary, I believe, that's just about to come out. I just saw it yesterday about the '86 Mets. But yeah, there's personalities. But what's unique about that? A bunch of crazy guys winning a World Series. The hero. I mean, the only story that really is Buckner.
Bill Buckner.
That's the only story there. I mean, and I mean, you could make an idea of what went wrong or what happened. I mean, when Clemens comes out of the game, whether McNamara claims that Clemens wanted out, Roger said, "I never said that." I mean, and by the way, about that, now talking about point of view of the fan, something you just brought up about they don't care how they got there and everything. There is probably, my guess is, if you're going to list the top 10 assholes in this country right now, Lenny Dykstra is on that list. There's not a bigger ass. There's probably, he's in the top 10 douchebags of our time.
He's pretty obnoxious on Twitter. I'll give you that.
Wait, I mean, he's ripped off so many people. He went to jail. He's a horrible human being, right? And yet Met fans, yeah, Lenny, because they won. They don't give a fuck about anything. And that's not just Met fans, it's any fan. They don't give a fuck about anything but that the team win or lose, because Dykes is a perfect example. The other thing about this '86 series, and I've had this discussion about, sometimes I guest host on the Sports Reporters with Bob Ryan and Mike Lupica, Mitch Ryan. And this idea that Bill Buckner cost them the World Series is absurd.
Yeah.
It's for a ton of reasons. Number one, the game was already tied. Okay, the game was tied, so there's no guarantee they're going to win anyway. Number two is, it's game 6. It's game 6. And the Boston had a 3-run lead, I think, in the 5th inning of game 7. Same thing with this Don Denkinger call at first base with Kansas City. It's bullshit. Bullshit. He blew a call at first base in the 9th inning of game 6. Okay, they blew a call in the 9th inning, first guy up. Okay, so you got to, that's the first time somebody blew a call in the 9th inning with a man out first. Get 3 outs, the game's over, you win the World Series. No, they totally lost mentally. They crumbled mentally, and it was game 6. Stuff like that, it's like game 6. Come on. So again, whether the fan, like you mentioned the Mets, whether the team wins or loses.
Well, it's like with Steve Bartman with the Cubs, how he got blamed for that.
Well, yeah, the Cubs had to pick somebody. I mean, and Moises Alou had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, his tantrum over
tantrum, and by the way, they gave up 7 runs in that inning.
Yeah,
I mean, the shortstop boots the double play ball that ends the inning. I mean, it's bullshit. Everybody likes to have a scapegoat. It's good for their narrative. It makes people feel better about themselves because they can blame somebody else. And that's, by the way, that's not just in sports. That's in everything.
Now, did you do any Arliss episodes about hockey? Because Earl's a huge hockey head over here. He knows everybody.
We did a couple of them. We did a couple of them. We did one about a goon who was really a bad guy. I mean, a really bad goon. And we turned him into did we turn him into a wrestler? I think we did. I don't remember the episode. We did another one with Lou Diamond Phillips played a hockey player who I think his name was Guy Fondue. I remember we always name stuff after like French food. Guy Fondue, Luc Cassoulet. We always did stuff like that. But he was he was up in Quebec or somewhere in the middle of Canada, and he was thinking about not coming back. Or I forgot what it was. Hockey players. I mean, Luc Robitaille was on the show a lot. He was such a great guy. But hockey players generally are always known as the nicest players. They're always the nicest athletes.
Well, I think it's because they work so hard. Like, there's a Thomas Sandstrom in the '93 finals with the Kings. He was playing with a broken leg, like broken fibula.
No, I also think a lot of it has to do from Canada. Canada's a more polite country, and it's indigenous for most of it. There's not a ton of diversity in hockey. A little bit more now, but not much.
Yeah.
Well, I never thought I'd get to ask you a baseball question. I think a better movie, not to argue with Chad, would be about the '79 Pirates, because you talk about interesting characters in that locker room. And I want to ask you, because no one I know likes baseball. I think Dave Parker should be in the Hall of Fame. Yes or no?
Yes. No answer from no support from me. Also, a friend of mine, David Permit, has been developing a movie about Doc Ellis and the no-hitter on acid and everything. He's been developing that movie. So that's a possibility that you may see that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, the Pirates are because that's the We Are family, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, see, there you got a story because of the social implications of it. Dave Parker was a great player. Dave Parker was a great player.
Well, it gets.
But interestingly, is my manager is a diehard Pittsburgh fan. He's got more Clemente memorabilia than any person in the world. He's he's Will Farrell's manager and Judd Apatow, but he's got more Pirate memorabilia. And if you ask him though, if you put together your all-time Pirate team, first team, Parker ain't on it.
Well, I can see that. I mean,
was it Clemente? Clemente.
Do you think, like Dave Parker had this amazing 5-year run, and then spotty after that, because of injury?
I would say yes. Yes.
But do you think a player should be, if he has a great short prime versus a great and then the rest of his career is up and down, do you judge it on his prime or his whole career?
It depends. Let me take each case individually because, Koufax has only got 4 great years, really. It's 4 great years. And then he has to stop. So that's part of it. It's Kirby Puckett.
Oh, yeah. I have his rookie card.
Mattingly is the one that comes to mind. Like I said, Koufax has 4 or 5 great years. Well, that's only 2 years more than Doc Gooden had or Ron Guidry had. So I'm a little bit tougher on the Hall of Fame than some. I'm not into a lot of this. Brian Kennedy is a dear friend, but we argue a lot. I just, for me, Joey Votto is not a Hall of Famer. I mean, the numbers just aren't there. I mean, he walks. Okay, he walks. Okay, OPS is fine. On base is fine, but if you're not running, I mean, you're a first baseman batting third. You're not driving in runs and hitting home runs. I'm sorry. You walk. Okay. Do I think? Again, it depends on. See, nowadays the number is going to be so different because you have to judge everybody in the same era. You cannot compare eras. I don't care what they say about, Park adjusted so-and-so, and that's bullshit. How can you adjust? I'm watching a game yesterday, and I'm saying, okay, let's compare eras. He goes, well, these guys today are so much bigger, stronger, faster. I go, yeah. Okay, let them go back and play there. First of all, take off your batting helmet. That's number one. Take off the helmet. You get hit in the head, you get hit in the head. I go, let's take that. I go, let's take away that. Now let's take away on defense the gloves. I did a movie Cobb, and there was a flashback sequence.
Oh, yeah.
With Roger Clemens, actually. And we had to use they had to use the uniforms and the equipment. That anybody ever caught a ball is beyond me. These gloves back then, no wonder everybody hit 350, 340. There's at least 5 to 10 hits every 100 at bats you wouldn't get. On the same respect, where is the difference, the stat for modern medicine? I once asked Sandy Koufax, in today's modern medicine, how long would you have been out? He says maybe 6 months. So where's that
Wow.
stat? Where's that stat? Guys now have Tommy John, they're back in a year. Back then, career's over. So you have to judge people in their own era against the competition they played in. It's just unfair any other way. So as far as, compiling, yeah, and by the way, somebody who compiles figures over a long period of time, yeah, there's something to be said for that too. You're not going to see anybody ever win 300 games again. That's not even close to happening. So, but then again, the win doesn't count as much as it used to. So, you got to make adjustments. Baseball's a game of adjustments.
Speaking of the Hall of Fame, you brought it up earlier. Do you think those guys like on the juice, or you think that they'll ever get in with the sports writers?
They are in there. Oh, with the sports writers, into that part of it. All their records are in the Hall of Fame. They're in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame's a museum. This whole idea that it's the pearly gates.
But like your boy Clemens, who
and Barry, both
yeah,
of them.
of course.
Yeah, well, to me, this is like saying, you got to understand how the Hall of Fame was. Everybody treats us like it's the pearly gates, for God's sake. It's a building. It's a museum. That's what it is. This romanticism that these are the greatest guys. The first guy they put in the Hall of Fame was Ty Cobb. I mean, he was the first one in. He's a racist, a wife beater. Ty Cobb's threw games for money. He threw games. He went into the stands and beat up a quadriplegic. He was a Klansman. He was and he's the first guy they put in. So this idea that you got to be holier than thou to get into the Hall of Fame is absurd. Because these people have this romanticized idea that baseball, great players, great guys. It's not. It's not. Barry Bonds is one of the 10 best players that ever played. Roger Clemens is one of the 10 best pitchers that ever played. I mean, when you look at the ballots and you compare those two to everybody else who's gotten in, and by the way, how many guys already have gotten in who are on steroids? Are we going to talk about them? You're going to talk about Pudge? You're going to talk about Bagwell? You're going to talk about Biggio? You're going to talk about Piazza? You're going to talk about all these guys? Come on. So
Bagwell and those Astros they're in the Hall of Fame?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I never understood the hatred of the guys who were on roids when a guy like Gaylord Perry, Don Sutton doctored baseballs and probably half their wins. So they cheated and they're in. So
yeah, I wouldn't put Sutton and Perry in the same category. Perry,
but I mean, not
Sutton. Sutton was a pretty damn good pitcher. So was Perry. But I mean, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I'm sure guys in the 70s with the pine tar in the bats and
what about the
God
30s and 40s and 50s? They were taking shit back then. They were taking greenies, and Willie Mays said they had a thing called red juice. I mean, athletes are always going to take any. We once, during Arliss, there was I remember when a poll came out, and they asked 100 Olympic athletes, how many of you would take an illegal but undetectable, product that would help your performance, knowing that it would take 10 years off your life on the back end? 97% said yes. Athletes are always going to do that.
Because their job's to win. That's at all costs. Do whatever you can. Get that advantage.
Their job is to have a job.
There you go. What a perfect bow tie on this episode. Before we let you go, Mr. Wohl, Earl, you have anything you want to ask?
One more thing about baseball, because it's so exciting to ask an actual fan these questions.
Knowledgeable fan.
Oh yeah, beyond knowledgeable. Do you think Negro League players, if they were allowed to play like Satchel Paige, how do you think Satchel Paige would have done against Babe Ruth and players of that era?
Tosh had that great bit about that. Like, would Babe hit all those home runs? I forgot how it went, but it was hilarious. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No. Do you think guys like Satchel Paige and those guys would have done as good as they did if they were allowed to play in the league?
Satchel Paige comes into Major League Baseball, Bill Veck, I think, hires him in what 1950 something or something. I mean, and he still won about 15, 20 games. So the answer is, when you talk about Satchel Paige, that's one. It's like saying Babe Ruth. I mean, it's like Satchel Paige may be the best pitcher that ever lived. So let me put the question the other way. If Walter Johnson played in the Negro Leagues, how would he do?
Hmm.
That's an interesting take. I mean, I don't think he would have done as well.
He'd be great. He would have been. Yes, he would have. I mean,
I know.
we're taking the theory that every one of the players from the Negro Leagues would have been a superstar in the majors. Yeah. Would the top 15, 20% have been really good and better? Yes. Yes. Without a doubt. But I don't know if the 20th man on the bench is going to be, but yeah, the greats are the greats. Satchel Paige, are you kidding me? Satchel Paige, I mean, he's as good as any pitcher that ever lived. But again, we're talking the very best of the very best. We're not talking about the average. I mean, outside of Satchel Paige, how many other Negro League pitchers can you mention? I don't know. Actually, interesting you brought it up because I'm planning a trip with my nephews just before I started the podcast. We're going to Kansas City in August, and Bob Kendrick is the president of the Negro League Museum. Now, if you've never been to Kansas City, which is one of my favorite cities, as a comic, that was one of my favorite. Kansas City, go. The Negro League Museum is in the same building as the Jazz Hall of Fame, which is great too. But the Negro League Museum is a marvel. You will learn stuff and you will be shocked. Now, besides that, you got the best barbecue in the world.
Oh, phenomenal.
I mean, I can't wait to go to Joe's Barbecue there. I mean, again, and Gates and Arthur Bryant's. And so, I mean, they have the best, in my opinion, they have the best barbecue. So Kansas City is a great, and also the other thing they have great is Italian food. Kansas City has awesome Italian food. Why? Because it's a mob town.
Ah.
You remember the movie Casino?
Yeah, of course.
Where did all the money get funneled to?
Kansas City.
Kansas City. That's why you have the Jazz Hall of Fame there, because they nightclubs, and you have, so great Italian food because it's always been a mob town. And when you have mob towns, you're gonna have pretty good Italian food.
All right, before we let you go, I gotta jam a couple questions in here real quick because I don't know if I'll ever talk to you again. So real quick, best ballpark, your favorite player. It doesn't necessarily have to be the greatest player, but your favorite player.
Again, like anything else growing up, it's generational. But I grew up as a young kid with Maris and Mantle. So, and I played right field and I was left-handed here. So Maris when I was a kid. There's so many great ball players. I love George Brett. I love to watch it. Then there's guys I like to watch for different reasons. I mean, you talked about the Pirates. What about guys like Al Oliver? Remember Al Oliver? What a great. I bet you didn't expect to hear Al Oliver on the podcast today. I mean, there's so many great. I love Barry Larkin. I sold beer in the Astrodome, and I liked Rusty Staub for some reason.
Barry Larkin was on that Chris Sabo team.
Yes, he was. Barry Larkin's a great ball player. Chris Sabo. The Big Red Machine was just great. There's a lot of great ball. I mean, just watching Mays was beautiful. Watching, I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, best ballpark. That's a good one. Of the old ones, I mean, you have to separate them. I mean, you have to put Fenway and Wrigley in one category. And even Dodger Stadium, which is now outside of Wrigley, the oldest one in the National League.
I grew up an Indians fan, but we had WG on our house, so the Cubs games were on more. So I grew up watching the Cubs, and I went to Wrigley for the first time. I cried. Yeah, I literally cried.
Wrigley's fun. However, I got to say, both Wrigley and especially Fenway lose a lot of charm if you're sitting behind one of those posts. If you're sitting in the thing and you got one of those stands, it loses a lot of charm when you got to go like this for every play. But those two now of the new ballparks, of which are the phenomenal. Camden Yards is the first one, so I got to put that in the category. Cleveland's got a good park.
Progressive Field, Jacobs Field, I like to call it.
I went to all 7 games of the Marlin Cleveland World Series. I was very good friends with Wayne Heisinger. So I went to that game 3, where it was like snowing and it was like 10 degrees. Ooh, that was cold.
What a brutal series.
Out of the new, and a lot of them are nice, but 2 of them stand up for me above everything else. And that is San Francisco Phone Company Park, whatever phone company is owning the park now, AT&T, Pac Bell, whatever the hell, the US, I don't know what the hell it is. That's beautiful. And the other one, by far, is PNC in Pittsburgh.
That's awesome ballpark. Yeah.
It is, you know, as shitty a baseball team as they are, as shitty an organization as they've been, the one thing they did right was build that ballpark. That is a great, and it's small. That's a great. Those are the two. I mean, there's some other ones. Seattle would be a great park. I like Seattle. However, the problem with Seattle is unfortunate because it doesn't face the water. You know, by law, all the ballparks have to face a certain direction. That's what it has to face. I'm not sure if it's east or west, but you notice that the shadows always come out from behind home plate. You never see the shadows coming in from center field. It's always coming out from home plate. So all the ballparks have to face.
Like San Francisco. I mean, it's like right
any ballpark.
Yeah.
Well, they face the bay, so they got water. Same thing with Pittsburgh, faces the river and the downtown skyline. But Seattle, unfortunately, does not. You know, it does not. It faces so you don't get that water background that you'd like to have.
All right, I got to ask one fan question because we said you were going to be on the show, and I said I would for Ashley. She wants to know who was the best Joker in all the Batmans.
Again, I gotta separate the incarnations of Batman. You have the first, let's say the first incarnation of Batman, which is 88, 89 to what is it? 95 or so.
We're not talking Cesar Romero. We're talking movies.
Right. And then you got the Dark Knight series. So I'm going to separate the two. Now, the first incarnation of those four movies, was it 4 or 5 Batman movies then?
I don't even remember.
You know, Batman Returns, Batman and Robin, Batman, whatever it is. I've always been of the feeling that if you put them back to back in order, that every hour of that series gets progressively worse until it's unwatchable with Batman and Robin and George Clooney. I mean, it's unwatchable.
The Joel Schumakers.
Yeah. By the way, that's the way they wanted to go. If it wasn't for the whole Batman thing is Tim Burton. It's all Tim. Without Tim Burton, there is none of this. Because believe me, Warner Brothers wanted to go jokey. They liked it. See, Tim Burton did not like the TV series. I hated the TV series. But it was too campy for me. But Warner Brothers thought that's what they were going to get. And Tim Burton says, no, I'm not. That's not what I'm thinking about. And I once asked John Peters, and you got to remember, there was social media back then. Michael Keaton is never going to be Batman.
No.
I remember when they cast Michael Keaton, who I knew from stand-up.
That's right. And he went to my college, Kent State University.
Yeah, there you go. Michael's
Pittsburgh guy too.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Michael's a great actor. And Michael, I knew, and I had seen Clean and Sober, but Warner Bros. Had him in Beetlejuice, so they thought he'd be funny and jokey. Tim knew better. But I once, and people forget that the fanboys back then went on, they were going crazy when Michael Keaton was announced as Batman. They said,
I was one of them.
Mr. Mom is Batman, oh shit like this. And now the thing is, back then nobody took the fanboys that seriously. You know, they didn't have, there wasn't social media back then. There wasn't Comic-Cons, so it wasn't, okay, a couple of fans, who gives a shit? That wouldn't happen today. There's no way he could have withstood the avalanche of what happened today. So I once asked John Peters while shooting the movie, if Michael Keaton didn't do it, who were you thinking of? Just to give you an idea of the ideas where they were going with it. Who do you think they wanted?
Well, I know in Beverly Hills Cop, they wanted Stallone. So
that's how it started. But I'm talking about Batman.
Yeah. Who? Earl, this is your wheelhouse. 1990?
88.
88, sorry.
I would, I could see them getting an Eddie Murphy. I mean, I know Batman's not African-American, but like a comic, cartoony, campy actor. I give up, Mr. Wool. We could be here all day.
They wanted either Bill Murray or Chevy Chase.
Okay. Oh my God.
Okay. So now you realize where this series would have gone.
Right.
Okay. It's all Tim Burton. 100%. Because when Tim leaves the series after Batman Returns, which was too dark for everybody, they wanted Joel Schumacher to make it more campy, to make it go back to the fun Batmans. Now, I will say this, and this is generational. I think most things in life are generational. To your question on who's the best Joker, obviously the first incarnation, it's Jack. It's Jack. The second incarnation, make your own choice. Here's the difference. And my close friend and college classmate, Brett Cullen, played Thomas Wayne in the Joker movie. And he was in a Dark Knight, one of the Dark Knight movies too. The thing that they're different animals. The Dark Knight series is a lot darker, than the Batmans were, the original Batman. The Batmans were dark for the time, but they were also fun. Jack Nicholson is funny. I mean, legitimately funny, cracking jokes. Whereas the Jokers there's no fun in them. It's darker. Now, that is generational because post 9/11, things got darker for that generation. And there's no doubt. I once asked a film class about that. I asked them, why is every third movie about the apocalypse? It's like every third movie seems to be about the apocalypse. And then one of them said, we all grew up post 9/11. So I go, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I don't find I find them great movies, but not fun. Whereas the first Batman, I can't say anything beyond that, was more fun. I'm not making a judgment call on that. It just is. So I was with Jack, so I'm going to go Jack.
Team Jack. There you go, Ashley.
But again, I can't negate the greatness of Heath Ledger and the performance of Joaquin Phoenix. They're different movies. It's just different. It's just different. I mean, Jack is a comic book character. The other guys aren't.
Yeah.
They're just psychopaths.
Well, we can talk.
But it's a different animal.
Yeah. Well, we could talk to you all day, but we got to wrap it up. Earl, anything else?
Well, now I want to ask him about 7 more questions of who the best Batman was, who his favorite baseball announcer was. But
we'll come back around.
Okay,
yes,
we'll do it again.
Well, thank you. This has been a tremendous honor. I think I speak on behalf of Earl. Again, thank you for doing this, and best of luck to you and your future and your family. And thanks again.
And all the best to you guys and your podcast and your families. Be well, be safe.
All right, the great Robert Wuhl. Earl, close it out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wuhl.
All right, he left quickly.
Yeah, he was like, if you ask me who my favorite baseball announcer is, I'll fucking stab you through the computer screen. He was good. He warmed up.
Yeah, it was weird because I was trying to feel where he wanted to, and as soon as he hit the baseball thing, I go, okay, this is where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe like 15 minutes in, he's going to be the first one we've had that doesn't want to let loose or like whatever. But I think once we hit the baseball,
I feel like a complete ass because I totally forgot he was a comic because I didn't do any prep before I got. But then as soon as he said, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I seen you doing stand up.
I thought he did more one-man shows and stand-up.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
he's probably happy deep down to do this. I mean, how many people are asking him to be interviewed? Like, he had a great run.
Oh, dude, that's a great career. That is a fantastic career.
But he's probably been asked to do an interview in a bit, so like, does he wish it was you and I doing it? Probably not, but like,
yeah, I'm sure he I wish
I'm getting a question from Kevin Brennan, not about he says, what happened? What did Leslie Jones do? She bumped Jeselnik and he split. That's what the word on the street is.
Bumped Jeselnik where?
I don't know. I mean, I know the last time I talked to him, probably a year and a half ago, he told me a great story that he was about to go on in the OR and she came in and wanted to bump him and he said no. But I don't know if he's referring to that story or something that happened recently.
Yeah, did it happen again?
I mean, that's what he makes it sound like, but who knows?
Before I go, I gotta go. But are you on the store
Dude, let's
lineup?
hang out and talk for a few hours. No,
are you on the store lineup this weekend?
I don't think I am. So, I mean, I'm friends with Emily, so I think I'll be.
Oh, is she the booker?
Yeah, she got it. So, I mean, that's good for me, but obviously we're not that good of friends.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's only 2 shows though, so it's. I'm sure she's got to fill it with the Whitneys and Jeselniks, and I get it.
I know Steve Simone flew back for the shows.
Yeah, he might be on it too. I'm loved up there, but because I'm not exactly the most well known. I don't know. We're friends, so I didn't want to call her and hit her up. So
Yeah, you'll be on eventually. It'll work out.
I'm starting to get up more at the Improv too. But I got to branch out a little bit. So
Are they indoor yet? The Improv?
they're doing Thursday through Saturday in the patio, but it's pretty good. Like they fill it, and they put me up semi regularity. So
Before I let you go, did you see the Piper documentary?
no, I want to talk for a few hours, dude.
I literally got to get to my gig.
I don't care what about your gig. It's about me. No, I'm just kidding. I thought I should have been on it, to be honest with you, about the Stone Cold podcast thing, but I liked it. I thought it reeked of the WWE having their hands on it.
Sure.
It's like kind of the Andre the Giant HBO thing, because I think, the podcast story to me is fascinating because Stone Cold kicked us off.
Yeah.
So I thought they could have maybe delved into the end of his life a little better. But it was good. I watched the whole thing. Did you like it?
I loved it. You know how much Roddy means to me. He's the reason why I do stand-up comedy. So no, it just reinforced about how much of a force of nature that guy was in that entertainment field, and just how good he was. The way he got crowds going crazy. He was so fucking good.
You should listen, and I'm not saying this because I get mentioned in it, but Jim Cornette's yesterday did a review of it, and he brought up a lot of good points. Like they glossed over.
He brought you up?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. About the 20-minute mark, he was making fun of me, but it was all good.
You know Jim Cornette?
We interviewed him once, and he kept calling me a Canadian, and I'm like, no, Roddy says I'm a comedian. And he's like, you got a better chance of being a Canadian.
That's pretty funny. It
was just stupid, but he did a really good recap of it.
Did it just come out? Did it just come out?
Yeah, it's episode 78.
Okay, good. Because I have like an hour to my gig, so I'll just listen to it on my way there now.
Where are you at tonight?
I'm in Fort Walton Beach on a resort there. I'm doing a resort.
Is this the gig I saw you headlining?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah, then I'm headlining the Comedy Zone in South Carolina this weekend. So
awesome.
I'm on the road, baby.
Yeah, I might do some gig in Milwaukee coming up, but some new club that just opened up. But
I heard about that. Yeah, I know about that.
I think the guy from the Improv, I don't know if he helps book it, but he was like, hey, you should do this club. It's not that much money, but I wouldn't mind getting out and doing an hour a couple times.
Spread your wings. All right, Earl, this was a great Bad Guys episode, I believe, volume 6. Anything you want to plug before we roll out?
Not really, to be. The Jellies on HBO Max, and I don't know. I'm not going to lie. That's all I got going, to be honest with you.
It's more than me.
That's why I'll never make it. I'm too honest. I should say, yeah, I got a Netflix thing coming out. And no, it's got the Jellies on HBO Max, and that was 4 months ago. So,
all right. On behalf of Earl, this is Chad Zumock, Florida's greatest, signing off. That's a wrap, guys. Leave a 5-star review on both our podcasts, and we will be back very soon. Later. Out.